The power of mini zines. Today, I'm going to share with you 4 different ideas that have massively helped me, but that you can also use in your own zine project to level it up a little bit. You don't have to use all of these ideas, but for each one, I'm going to give different examples from my own mini zine that I finished recently, and I'll show you a little bit of the process of making that. And I'll also give exercises and ideas for you to explore at home, and some extra downloadable materials in the description that you can follow along with. The first idea to level up your mini zine is play. By play, I mean getting away from your computer or getting away from, planning and overthinking what you're doing, and just getting lost in the process of making and the process of playing around and experimenting with your work. So I think this is really good for the ideation phase of your project, or if you do prototyping like I talked about in my last video as the number 1 step that I like to follow to create a more amazing or a more polished zine project, then you can also use this idea in that part of the process. So an exercise I like to do to encourage more play in my zine is to put the computer aside, get out a couple pieces of paper, fold them up into a small size. I recommend maybe A6. I'll put the dimensions here if you want to try it yourself. Fold them into a small size, staple them together so you have a little empty booklet, and then take any illustrations, any photos, any text, stuff that you're thinking about maybe putting in a zine, old work that you have, just print it out, have a little copy, or maybe do a little doodle version of it, and cut it out with some scissors and start collaging. It might remind you of if anyone's ever done a vision board or something when you're in high school. It's kind of like that. So kind of create almost a vision zine and play around with different tapes, different colored markers, maybe some glue, whatever it is that just makes you feel like a kid again and makes you feel like you're playing. Use that and kind of just paste in the work that you have, the work that you're thinking about maybe having potential to be part of a zine. And you can also play around a lot with pairing certain images together, or for me, I often realize something I'm missing. So maybe something that could go really well in this page, and maybe I haven't created it yet, but I have all these other images that would enhance that idea. And so in this way, you kind of end up with a nice little storyline or maybe idea of a theme that you want to follow. And so that can help a ton in the ideation phase. And it can also help in the prototyping phase if you're going to do a prototype of your zine. I like to have a really visual way to see my spreads before I go ahead and print the real thing. So I made one more dummy and I glued all of my pictures to it, so I could see what it would actually look like when all of the images are inside, and also to help me figure out the order of the images for myself. Because I'm a very tactile and visual person, so just having this sheet and seeing what the print will actually look like is really helpful for me when I'm making those last final tweaks and making decisions on what I should do before printing. It also gives you a feel of what it will be like to put together your real zine before you spend all of the time and all of the materials making 50, 100 or more copies. And it's a good opportunity to experiment with things that you're not comfortable with. And experimenting with a little prototype version is my way of exploring those new things and making something that is a little more polished and that feels like a little bit more effort and thought went into it. So while everyone has their own methods and you don't have to do all of this, for me it saves a lot of time and actually makes it easier to print the final thing when I can see what my print will actually look like before it gets all folded up. And from those little copies, I've made one last prototype. I'm gonna practice folding and cutting this final copy before I go through the effort of printing hundreds of pages on the risograph using ink and masters and all of those slightly more expensive things. So let's put this together and see if it meets my standards before we put together the final thing. The second level up idea is all about materials. So, of course, there's normal paper, normal ink, photocopiers. You can use whatever materials you want. But the thing I love about mini zines or small self-publishing is that you can really use whatever materials you want. You don't even have to use paper. You can use wood, you can use felt, you can use anything you like to enhance your project. And usually because zines are a smaller edition and they have this handmade element, you can kind of go a little bit crazier with the materials you decide to introduce. In terms of paper, this could be as simple as like incorporating some colored paper, multiple colors of paper, different textures, maybe even different sizes of paper within the same publication. You could even use different printing methods like risograph, silkscreen, or letterpress. Or maybe you want to experiment with color and make a single color zine or a duotone zine. All of these little choices in materials can really impact the story that you're telling. I feel pretty satisfied at this point with how the zine works, how my prints are looking, and I can move on to actually printing. And for this example, I have prepared all of my files for risograph printing, which means they'll be in black and white. They're in color here just so I could make sure my print files overlapped correctly and that I hadn't messed up any of the preparation phase of this. For me, I have a lot of experience risograph printing and silkscreen printing, so I'm leaning into that a little bit, but if it was something new to me, like if I'd never Riso printed before, but I wanted to include that, try to think of a way you can do it in a less pressured or like stressful way. So maybe that means printing in one color and trying to be creative with like the texture and taking advantage of that part of things. And when it comes to choosing materials, I also think it's good to consider how your materials reflect the theme or the content of your publication. So, for example, my zine is about collecting different little pleasures in life and presenting those as a collection of stamps. And I really like the retro feeling of old matchbooks or old stamps. So for me, risograph printing these in a limited color palette is also reflective of the overall theme and feeling of the content. And the fold-out cover feels like it's revealing something special and secret or like someone's personal collection or story. So it all comes together to replicate the same feeling and theme. Okay, let's head to the printing room right here, and I'll go ahead and start printing the interior pages of the zine. So the second little exercise you can do at home is in the description box below. You'll find a link to a big list I've made of different materials. And I want you to circle up to 3. And for each one, write out how using this material would change the zine project you make. You could even write negative things like, will it make it a lot harder for you? In the positive direction, how will this change the theme or enhance the story you're telling with your zine? Maybe it's just something fun that you want to try out. Sometimes it's something we don't even realize until we sit down and look at this list or come across this idea, and then kind of gives us an aha moment. Okay, are you guys ready for print reveal? This is only the first 2 layers, but I'm really happy with how it's turning out so far. I think because I left this blank space in the center here, it's really helping a lot with not getting any roller marks or ink marks. It's like the perfect amount of space. So if you're also using Riso for your project, definitely attend to the blank space that you need. I'm gonna print the last layer, and then we have the other side too. We'll finish up printing this, and then I'll see you when we put it all together. that is about form. So kind of like materials, we also have so many choices of different forms for self-published zine projects. So it could be an accordion zine. It could be some kind of elaborate sewn binding. There's so many different ways to put together our final pages. And this is especially maybe something that's a little easier to do if you have less pages because there might be a little less labor involved. The ways we can bind or put together our zines runs the gamut from even like non-binding bindings. I've seen rubber bands holding loose leaf pages together. I've seen pages being held together by rings or clamps or metal pieces. Of course, there's zines that are just folded in like this very interesting origami way, and there's no like staples or anything. So my exercise for exploring form is look at your project and kind of think about, is there a problem you want to solve? It could even just be like you find a regular binding a bit boring and you want to solve this problem by experimenting with a new type of binding. For me, it was that I didn't want to show the staples in the binding. I didn't want a typical staple binding, but also I like the convenience of staples. And so I came up with this fold-out book format because it makes the zine look a lot more polished, but also it means I don't have to sew or do some kind of more labor-intensive binding. So think for yourself what kind of problems you might be able to solve with your formatting, and let that lead the way for you to find a format that works best for your zine. The final idea for leveling up your zine is all about those finishing touches. So of course, presentation and packaging is something that comes at the very end, but also something that can be super impactful. It's also something that's just really fun. Like even if you have quite a simple project, if you present it in a really interesting and thoughtful way, that can make a huge difference in how people react to it and how people, are open to and spend time with your ideas that you're presenting. That's why a lot of us make zines, is to share them with other people and to kind of transmit those ideas or thoughts or art to other people. And so packaging does play a huge role in this. For example, this could be something small like a bonus item, like a bookmark, a slipcover, a belly band that holds the project together. There's so many different ways we can package our work. And even in the packaging, we can incorporate some of those interesting materials or forms if we didn't want to put those in our main zine. There's a couple exercises you can do to evaluate what type of packaging works best for your zine. And the first one is just to self-question, like looking at this final project, is there a way I can make the experience of this publication just a little nicer, just a little more attractive for people? Think about the books you love or the zines you love and what drew you to them. Is there something in the packaging that made them more interesting or funny or fun and unique to you? Another thing you can do is page through your zine and also kind of be aware of like, are there any problems or things that would make the experience of reading it a little bit easier, a little more comfortable. It doesn't always have to be about the looks. It can also be about the comfort and the readability of your project. And the last idea for an exercise you can do with this idea is to invite a friend over. Invite someone to just look at your zine, just hand it to them, and don't give them any prompts, don't give them any extra information, but just see and observe how they interact with it. Sometimes when you see someone interacting with your zine in person, you can kind of observe how they handle it, what they're drawn to, maybe the problems they have with handling it. And it just becomes a little more obvious the little tweaks you can do in the packaging or presentation that might make people interact with your work or explore it in the way that you truly want them to. So a good example of this is I recently did the Seoul Art Book Fair, and I had a version of my new zine there, what I thought was going to be the final version. But then after watching people interact with it a little bit, I found that there are a couple things that I just wanted to add on in the packaging to make it a little easier for people to explore and read the zine. First of all, one thing that I already kind of had realized, but when you print with risograph ink on the cover of a book, it can make the ink like smear or feel like it could transfer or get on your hands. I wanted to add a little like slip cover so that people could more comfortably handle the zine. And also I like how this adds in the title on the front, because I didn't really want text on the front of the zine, but this kind of makes it like more removable, and it has this kind of transparent aspect to the paper that I chose to use. And finally, this kind of also helps to keep the zine together, because with the fold-out cover and the format, some of the pages tend to expand a bit when it's sitting flat. So it kind of just makes it look a little bit neater and more presentable when it's sitting on the table. So funnily enough, in this last like final touch, I feel like I kind of hit upon material and form in one step as well, because of using this like fun paper and also kind of adjusting how people are interacting with the work. So sometimes it can be those like really small finishing touches that just add a whole new aspect and really make the work feel more special, but also help to get your message across, whatever that is, to the audience that you want to read it. So those are my 4 ideas for leveling up your mini zine. I hope having my own mini zine, which is called Little Pleasures Volume 1, is also a little bit helpful in visualizing how some of these steps might play out. I feel like incorporating little bits of all of these ideas into my final project really helped me get across the theme better. The theme is about physically collecting little moments of everyday life as these small little objects, like in the form of a stamp collection. And I think packaging it in this way kind of makes it feel like this little precious collection that other people can also take with them and use as a little pick-me-up during their day or during their week. And if you're interested in this zine or any of the exercises in text form, you can find all the links to that stuff down below in the description box. And I'll see you guys in the next video.